Hello, everybody. I'm John Hayden. I'm a founder of Microfish Academy. Microfish Academy is so much more than fish. It is a K-12 resource center. It's also a repository of great books that we're writing of all different kinds. In 1983, I met a man named James Ellsberry. We call him Els, and we call him Jim. Jim has been my friend since then, where he was my professor, helping me to learn to become an administrator and a leader in the education world. An amazing story about Jim. He came over and talked to two of us who were in his class at Butler. And we thought, oh, what did we do? Even administrators think, uh-oh, the teacher's checking in on us. And he said, hey, I heard you talking about going fishing. He said, could I go with you sometime? So here's this guy, and he's our professor. And he wants to go fishing with us. So my friend and I, Jim, we took Jim fishing and many times. But Jim has been my fishing buddy, mentor, and friend ever since. We've made many, many, many trips to Canada fishing, and we've made many trips here in Indiana to lakes, always in search for Mr. Crappie. But Jim has joined Microfish Academy and brought his over 60 years of experience to be part of our program. And one of the really exciting and delightful things is he happens to be a really good author. And he speaks from his heart, and he touches hearts. And so I was taking Rainbows and Thunder, which is his first book that he's going to allow us to show and sell on Microfish Academy, which is now Microfish Academy Publisher. And Rainbows and Thunder is the latest book that he's written, and he's written 6. We want to do audiobooks, so this video here that we're going to use as a reel on Facebook is also going to be kind of a tryout for me to see if I can read these stories well enough that somebody would want to listen. So here we go. Here's the book from Jim Ellsberry, Rainbows and Thunder, Only God Can Change a Heart. Author James Ellsberry. And of course, all rights are reserved by James Ellsberry. And this is the Microfish Academy Publishing. I'm going to make the dedication and talk to the dedication because I've met his daughter, Carol Lynn. I met her at his house. And I was so impressed with her heart and the depth of her heart that when I found out that we lost her and that he lost her and his wife Doris lost her, I was really, really touched because I just really liked her. So in this dedication, this book is dedicated in memory of Jim and Doris's daughter, Carol Lynn, 1964 to 2012. She was a lover of horses and rode in competitions during her high school years. She had visited the wild sanctuary south of Hot Springs, South Dakota, and at the time of her passing, she requested that her ashes be scattered where the wild horses run. The Institute of Range and the American Mustang was founded by Dayton O. Hyde in 1988. In 2014, the Ellsberrys adopted a filly at the sanctuary. Her name is Carol's Song. She's a full-grown mare and still running free. One of Carol's favorite songs was Somewhere Over the Rainbow by Harold Arlen and lyrics by Yip Harburg, a song that is near and dear to my heart. It has some verses that seem to fit the trials and tribulations of the girl who is the focus of the story. Some of those have been inserted at appropriate places within the context of the story. The main character in the story is James LaRoche. He's telling the story about his sister, Laurielle. And this is what he had to say. Supernatural, some have said, of the events that transformed our family in fall of 1956. I call it a miracle. Let me tell you how it all came about, and you can decide for yourself. I was 10 years old when my little sister, Laurielle, came along. We lived in the hills of eastern Kentucky, not far from the Ohio River and the border of West Virginia. Times were difficult for our family, as they were for most people in those days. Jobs were hard to find. The economy hadn't fully recovered from the Great Depression of the 1930s. People had little money to spend, even on food and clothes. Average workers were earning $1,725 a year, and our chickens were selling for 55 cents a pound. But for us, our lives were forever changed in 1940. Our father, Charles, was a sharecropper, a tenant farmer. That means we lived on a 60-acre plot owned by a rich man who let us live there, plant crops, and raise livestock. For the right to live on his property, he took half of whatever profit we could make by selling our meat and vegetables. It was hard work. By the time I was 12, I could drive our mule, pulling plow, preparing our tobacco field for planting. We also hunted small game and fished nearby creeks to add to our food pantry, frog legs and turtle soup. My mother and father were born and raised in a small community just east of Terre Haute, Indiana. My mother, Sarah Blackford, and her two brothers and a sister lived on a small farm. Her father, Howard, was employed as a coal miner. My father, Charles LaRoche, was an only child. His parents also lived on a farm, and farming was their life's blood. My father loved the farm. He had visions of owning his own farm and raising cattle. Being a small community, our families were acquainted. Sarah and my father attended the same school and the same church. Although father was a year older, there were some years when attendance numbers dropped, classes were combined, and they shared classes together. One could say they were childhood sweethearts, and that wouldn't be far off the mark. They were married in 1928, 1 year after father had graduated and on mother's 18th birthday. That timing seemed perfect for father to begin the pursuit of his dreams. His grandfather had lived for years in northeastern Kentucky as a tenant farmer on 60 productive acres with a house and a barn. My grandmother had passed and his health was failing. He contacted my father and asked if he'd be interested in taking over that operation. He was, and began chasing the dream. In 1940, fate dealt him a serious blow. At the age of 30, my mother, Sarah, died following the birth of fraternal twins. 2 days after his birth, my brother Eric died also. My sister Laurielle survived. Honestly, I don't remember a lot about my mother. I was 12 at that time. I recall thinking she was pretty, and I know she loved me. Our father loved her deeply, but often teased her and called her a dreamer and would make fun of the dreams she had about traveling to faraway places to escape the dirt and poverty of being sharecroppers. She had a music box given to her by her mother as a gift on her 18th birthday as a wedding present. Our mother often wound the spring that made the parts move, and music played somewhere over the rainbow, and she'd go to those faraway places. Our father thought it was a stupid machine, a waste of money that just encouraged mother's daydreams. He was a burly man, strong, hardworking, and proud of his French heritage. La Roche, our family name, translates in French to the Rock. He didn't like nicknames such as Rocky or Frenchy. Charles was a name one could be proud of, like Charles de Gaulle, the French army officer and statesman who led the French resistance against Nazi Germany during World War II. He enjoyed telling people about his great-great-grandfather being a fur trapper during the years prior to the Revolutionary War. Like Mother, he had dreams too, but the hard times in Mother's miscarriage left him lonely and bitter. He blamed Laurel's birth as the cause of our mother's passing. He wanted to give her away, but none of the families in our area could afford another mouth to feed. He became a binge drinker, given to fits of bad temper when consuming too much moonshine. He could also be charming and willing to give anything he owned to those in need. A widow, Miss Addie McFadden, lived less than half a mile down the road from us. She was perhaps in her early 50s, but her gray blonde hair and frail body made her appear older. Her husband, Braden, was killed in 1916 during the Battle of Verdun, France, fighting against the Germans in World War I. Our father had great sympathy for her and often helped manage the physical chores she couldn't do. Sometimes he sent me in his place to feed the livestock, mend a fence, or patch the roof for Miss Addie. After Mother's death, our father was able to strike a bargain with her. She would provide care for baby Laurel, and we would care for her property. On Sunday, December 7th, 1941, Miss Addie came running to tell us that she had heard on the radio that the Japanese Air Force had attacked American ships at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. Our nation would be at war again. Many of the young men in our area immediately went to town, volunteers anxious to enlist in the military. Some volunteered out of a sense of patriotism. Others did it because it was better than being unemployed, broke, and hungry. Our father tried to enlist, but being over 30, a widower with 2 children, and diagnosed with a heart murmur, he was rejected. That only made him angrier about the direction of his life. As the years went by, we understood the denial of a daughter was never going to change. That's the end of my initial reading career. I'm going to put this as a reel on Facebook, and I may even sneak it into Instagram and to TikTok. Stay tuned. Thank you for listening. The rest of this book will make you think, will lift you spiritually, and prove that miracles do come true.